Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode. I haven't done an episode for a few weeks now. I'm actually really excited to get back into doing some more videos for you guys because I know how much that you love it. Today I'm actually going to talk about the best rep range to build muscle, which for ladies I guess means a tight and toned physique, as if, you know, that's what you guys would usually refer to it as. Now, I do get this question a lot, and although I go through it in, detail in my one-on-one coaching, my 12-week programming, I haven't really explained it too much in a long-form video. So here we are. I am wondering how many of you guys have actually wondered this yourself, Googled the answer, maybe asked your trainer, read about it on Instagram, and how many times have you been given a different answer? And like, how confusing is it, okay? I would really love you guys to let me know in the comments below, just so that everybody that's watching this video knows that they're not alone, okay? I'm actually going to explain what each rep range actually means and what you'll get out of it, okay? So I actually really like to categorize programming into 3 separate groups. So firstly, you'll have strength. Now, this would be considered, your very heavy reps where you complete between, say, 1 and 5 reps, okay? It isn't limited, though, to the 5 main lifts, like, when I say that, deadlifts, squats, overhead press, like those kind of exercises. But generally, this is where you see this rep range being used the most, and where I guess it's the most beneficial as well. So typically you'll see power lifters working in this range, and usually this is the rep range that women tend to steer clear of because, they're scared of getting too bulky. This rep range, you won't usually see all the movements like your donkey kicks and more of those isolation, exercises that a lot of women actually tend to gravitate towards too. The rep range is actually really excellent to build strength in. It is the rep range that really focuses on your central nervous system as well, which is actually your body's internal system that tells your muscles to fire or basically contract, okay? Now, if you're not really sure of the role of your central nervous system, I'm going to give you a really quick little sum up of what it is so that you can, really understand more so in layman's terms. So our body actually limits the amount of access that we have to our total muscle, okay? So like a rev limiter in a car, for example, for the average person, probably 50 or 60%, okay? So we can only access that 50 or 60% of our total strength in a particular muscle. And it is just our body's safeguarding us, protecting us from injury. Now, athletes work towards accessing more of their total capacity in regards to muscle strength, and usually sit at around, say, 90% and above, okay? Now, the more access you have to this, the more strength that you will have, and the more muscle that you will grow, and so on. Okay, if you've ever had a few weeks off training and then gone back to training and you've gotten the shakes during an exercise, or even like after, you can't move, everything is just not working properly, it's your central nervous system, okay? If this rep range is one that you don't usually visit very often, or maybe you haven't at all, and all of a sudden you go and do this, you will notice very, very fast strength gains, okay? After that, we have got hypertrophy, okay? Now, which is where you will see most of your physique or bikini competitors or bodybuilders spend a lot of their time training in, and it looks generally like 8 to 12 reps, okay? Now, hypertrophy actually means, now this is like the terminology of what it means, is an increase in size of cells or an enlargement of an organ. So it actually makes sense that hypertrophy and sitting in an 8 to 12 rep range would actually be the space where you would see the most muscle growth. In fact, if we did a little experiment and took a group of people and separated them into different groups of rep ranges, this is actually the rep range that would win. But the problem, there's always a problem, is that people read this, hear about this, talk about it, and then they never ever change out of this rep range. And then after a little while, you'll stop seeing muscle growth. but I will come back to this in a couple of minutes, and I'll explain the next range that I like to work in as well. So the third part of training program that I like to work in, which is generally muscular endurance. The proper terminology is sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. Now, without getting way too sciencey here and confusing the hell out of you, the difference between hypertrophy and sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, while they both essentially mean growth or an enlargement of an organ or tissue, they are both very different, okay? So the sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, it is a mouthful, refers to an increase in the volume of the fluid that actually surrounds the muscle cell, but with no actual increase in your muscular strength, okay? So if you can just imagine the pump that you get when you go to the gym and you're lifting lots of reps for a sec. So sarcoplasm is actually the fluid that surrounds the muscle fibers, okay? So now a minute ago I was talking about hypertrophy, which refers to the muscle fibers increasing. Sarcoplasmic hypertrophy is the volume of the fluid in your muscle cells increasing, okay? So you can see why they're very different. Now, this kind of hypertrophy you will often see bodybuilders use when focusing on maximizing the overall size of their muscles. You'll also see a lot of athletes training in this space to build endurance, and also a lot of females that are actually chasing the toned look training in this rep range as well. Now, for some reason, we're led to believe that high rep ranges equal a toned booty and a flat tummy. I've got no idea where that started, but it's generally not the case, okay? So now that we have summed up each training rep range and what each will actually do for you, I know you're probably thinking, hurry up, Ash, what is, the best rep range? Now, training in hypertrophy seems to be the best way to train for muscle growth, but it's actually not the case. So prepare to have your mind blown. Now, if I took 3 humans, okay, that were genetically identical and had not really trained before, and had one training each rep range for say 6 weeks, okay? The human that trained in the 8 to 12 hypertrophy range would actually gain the most muscle. Now, based off what I told you before, that seems like, yes, it would be the case. But if your 2 clones kept doing the same thing for 6 months, 12 months, however long it be, the 3 of you would actually plateau, okay? This is due to adaptation. The human body is unfreaking believable at many things, and one of them is adapting to the environment, the workload, cardio, whatever it is. So what do? Let's say your 2 clones continued on their single rep range, as I just mentioned, and meanwhile you cycled through each of the rep ranges for a period of say 3 to 6 weeks, then moved on to the next one. All while your clones kept doing the same thing, you would build a lot more muscle, okay? And I'm not even talking about a little bit, I'm talking about you would freaking overtake them by a long shot, okay? If you've ever heard someone say something like the best kind of exercise is the one that you're not doing right now, that is what I'm referring to. Now, just because you enjoy one phase more so than another, or you seem to get more benefit from one phase than another, it doesn't actually mean that you shouldn't cycle through all of the phases and continue to pick up the benefits from each phase along the way, okay? Each phase or rep range has a lot of carryover to one another, and you'd be really, really silly not to do this. You would ultimately be heading for a plateau, and if you didn't, and you're in the space where you aren't quite where you want to be, which a lot of people aren't, I strongly suggest that you do this to at least eliminate a plateau coming your way and continue to help you progress and move forward. So if you're still sitting here wondering what is the best rep range to build muscle in, ask yourself, what have you been doing for the last 6 weeks? Or even more. Then my advice is to head straight into one of the rep ranges that you haven't been doing. Usually for me, it's like the 1 to 4 or 1 to 5 rep range, okay? Because you've been sitting in a 12 to 15 plus rep range, you know, as it's the most common, you'll benefit a great deal from slowing down the pace, taking those long rest periods that I often talk about, and picking up some heavier weights. Now, something else I want to add to this just quickly, there have been a couple of studies that actually compare cycling through phases like I just mentioned on a daily basis. And by that I mean 1 to 5 rep range on Monday, 8 to 12 on Wednesday, and 15 plus on Friday as an example, compared to say a 1 to 5 rep range Monday, Wednesday, Friday for a few weeks, and then moving on to another rep range. The studies are really close, okay, but the outcome consistently shows that there is more benefit, whether it's slightly more, but more benefit that comes from staying in the 1 rep range for periods of 3 to 4 weeks. I personally really like this and train and program in this way myself. It really does enable you to focus on the skill required to get really good at performing each exercise and growing and developing that with each individual rep range, and also tracking how well you're actually improving on your strength, you know, throughout that phase and throughout that particular rep range as well. Alright guys, that's it for another episode today. If you'd like to find out more about my one-on-one coaching, you can email me. My email is hello@ashlane.com.au. And if you haven't actually checked out my personal fitness journey or everything that I have to teach you over on my Instagram, I'd love you guys to join me. My handle is linked below. And lastly, while I'm here, I have tons of other videos on this YouTube channel that you can check out. There is certainly so much more to learn here. Hopefully it clears up a lot of the confusion and answers some questions, if not most of your questions, and even more if you are not doing any changing of rep ranges, this will give you the confidence to at least give it a try. You know, if you're still not comfortable, you know, guys, feel free to reach out to me and we can talk through some options so that you feel super confident heading into your training. Well guys, until next time, have a great week.